Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen barters of biblical proportions, beautiful monstrosities, and exploding kaiju ammunition. But we're going to kick things off this week with Absolute Wonder Woman #2, written by Kelly Thompson with artwork by Hayden Sherman. So this continues the exploration of Diana as she has now come to Earth for what we can perceive to be the first time within the absolute universe, and she's kind of withheld the oncoming onslaught of the herald, basically, of these monstrosities that are coming out. And it's really nice that we kind of take a step back from that and we start to see the relationship that has already been developed between Steve Trevor and Diana in the past as she saved his life in hell in particular. I love the way that Sherman renders Steve Trevor, as he is a military man and he's a man amongst men. However, he is rendered so frail in comparison to the might that is Wonder Woman herself. She looms large over him. And I love that we actually get to see that, through the way that Hayden Sherman is actually drawing these characters. Kelly Thompson is writing this in a very confident way. I love that, the confidence exudes not only from Diana, the character herself, as she is talking with the military individuals that are really kind of trying to, put a stranglehold on how she is helping them, even though these Lovecraftian creatures continue to attack the city, where she basically puts the kibosh on that and says, no, 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 I'm in control here. You follow my orders, not vice versa. But that confidence comes by way of the confidence that the creative team behind this book really are pushing forward all these ideas and all these wonderful storytelling mechanisms. The combination of Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman is truly something special right now, and I hope they continue that issue after issue. Next up, let's talk Action Comics 1077, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Clayton Henry. I've said it with each and every issue that I've reviewed of this, but Mark Waid's run on Action Comics right now feels classic in every single good way that you would anticipate a classic story. It's joyous, it's hopeful, it brings all those feelings forward, and it's kind of like your dad's Superman book if you're comparing this in direct opposition to Joshua Williamson's Superman, which is action heavy. It's just like a fun, joyful story. There is action, there is stakes at play here, but it feels very much leaning on like Silver Age ideas, but kind of reconceptualizing them in new, bold ways. So now that Clark has kind of gotten back into the present day, he is, back within the Phantom Zone, which is starting to materialize real, tangible items. It's kind of imploding upon itself, and it's drawing energy on Earth's sun, which I really like. That the catalyst basically for the downfall of the Phantom Zone and potentially Clark himself, if he can't get out, is the thing that actually gives him the power in itself. I love the way that Mark Waid is working with those ideas, which again feel very classic, but also feel very new within that same realm. So Action Comics 1077 continues to be a classic fun ride. All right, let's talk Amazing Spider-Man 62, written by Joe Kelly with artwork by Ed McGuinness. So when the Zeb Wells run ended, I kind of said, we need to get back to a grounded, gritty, street level Spider-Man that has hints of joy and hints of funniness, but it really needs to stay grounded. And what do we get delivered? Doctor Doom empowering Spider-Man with magical powers. But that's kind of okay. And I'm kind of shocked by that because I'm actually having a lot of fun with this. This issue revolves around Peter really having to kind of, go through the old magical tropiness where it's kind of like you have to solve this impossible question, or you have to answer a question in a way that is not necessarily answering it or solving the problem, but kind of sidestepping that. But it's written in a really nice way that speaks towards how Peter's personification in my head works. So Joe Kelly has a good grasp on the character, and he should, because he's written the character multiple times in the past. But again, I'm just kind of surprised at like how good a grasp is still there and how much more fun I'm having with this in direct opposition for the last couple runs, honestly, on ASM, where I've only been able to dip my toes in before I really had to give it up. this again, it's working with a lot of fun ideas, and it's not something that is too heavy. It's not something that you need to take too seriously. It's Spider-Man versus, the Heralds of Sidorak, for God's sake. You never really thought that that would be a thing that happened. Heck, way back in the past when Spider-Man fought Juggernaut, that used to be a big thing. Now he's fighting the god that empowers Juggernaut. So mind-blowing stuff here. But again, it's fun. It's written well. It's in character for Peter. So I'm along for the ride. He continues to trip over his own feet. The characters that are helping him along the way continue to see that he trips over his own feet, regardless of how much they try to help him. And it's all just a wild, fun ride. So, Amazing Spider-Man? It's really surprising me. All right, next up we have Black Canary, Best of the Best, #1. Written by Tom King with artwork by Ryan Sook. So this gets a little bit indulgent because the framing device of this entire issue is the commentary or the commentators, really, of a boxing or MMA style fight between Lady Shiva and Black Canary herself, which is totally depowered, all just physical powers, no superpower, superheroic kind of stuff that's happening here. And throughout the entirety of the issue, we get to hear over and over and over what the commentators are saying for the fight that's happening, while we kind of flash back and see the onset of the fight, the reason why the fight is happening, and all the interpersonal connections between Black Canary and how that drove her to make the decision that she's making right now. Overall, like I said, a little indulgent, but not bad either. I really enjoyed the issue. I think that it was a good introduction to this little mini arc of the character herself. And I think Ryan Sook really frames everything in a really nice way as well. The only critique I would really have is that sometimes his faces get to be a little plasticky, but when it comes to the action, when it comes to the actual visual storytelling, really, really nice stuff here. So overall, I think this is a good introductory issue. I'd like to see where it's going to be taking the series from here on out, considering that we got a bulk majority of kind of what the fight is going to be looking like. And I'm kind of curious to see if the framing of this issue series, I should say, is going to be 6 rounds, 1 round per issue. So time will tell on that. But overall, I think it was a really good time. Next up, let's talk Detective Comics 1091, written by Tom Taylor with artwork by Mikel Hanin. This issue is all about things that we've explored previously with Bruce. Actually, things we've explored very recently with Bruce, where he's given basically an out. He knows his body is aging. He knows that he won't be able to be Batman forever. All familiar ideas. They've both been explored in Batman itself and Detective Comics. However, he's given the choice basically from a character within his past that maybe he is going to be able to rejuvenate his body and, be able to be Batman a little bit longer than he normally would, longer than any other normal human being would. Now, again, that's an idea that we've explored, but it goes to show if you have a good, talented writer on a story, even ideas that have been explored before can be done in a really fantastic way. I was incredibly entertained by this issue. Now, part of that also comes by way of Hanin's artwork, as it is stunning. I don't know any other way to put it. It is so crisp and so nice, and the color work also complements it so much that it brings out the moodiness and the emotion behind the characters and the settings that we're working within in the issue. It's a really nice team up here between Taylor and Hanin, and I love what they're doing with this series. Overall, again, it's another surprising series and a surprising issue, as I thought I would be dropping off as Ram V's run had ended. This is enticing me issue after issue now. Hey, stick around, stay on this, because the team has something to say, and I want to be there to hear it. Next up, let's talk Green Arrow #18, written by Chris Condon with artwork by Montrose. So this is the onset of Chris Condon's run with the character of Oliver Queen, and it's really going to show that he's kind of hearkening back to a time where people like Denny O'Neil were writing the book, where it shines a spotlight on the corruption and the greed and the politics of Star City itself, and how Oliver Queen is combating that, even though he himself is a person of great wealth. This is a dark, gritty interpretation of the character, which really leans on ideas not dissimilar to what we've seen in, runs like Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev's Daredevil. I think it's leaning towards that kind of realm, and if that's the case, I'm extremely excited. I think that a crime-driven Green Arrow book is like just the perfect idea. It's so obvious, but so right for something to be explored. And this duo seems to be a really great team up for that kind of idea to take place. So we see that Oliver is investigating a murder basically within the pages of this book here, and it's very seeped in, like I said, that corruption type angle here. As we see, it revolves around the political intrigue of Star City and maybe some money, exchanging hands here. It by way of allowing certain things to happen within the city that shouldn't be happening with the water system. The artwork is gritty, it's dynamic. The only critique I would have on this is that I feel like the actual single issue itself needed a couple more pages to breathe and really give us a cliffhanger at the end that was going to entice new readers to stick around. I kind of love the character. I'm going to be along for the ride regardless. But again, as a satisfying single issue, it just needed a little bit something more. But overall, I think that this is the right direction to be taking the character of Green Arrow in the future. All right, next up we have Grommets number 6, written by Rick Remender and Brian Posehn, with artwork by Brett Parson. So I have a bit of an embarrassing admission here. I had just now realized after 6 issues that the writers of this book also quite frankly have the same names as our main characters within the pages of this book, being Rick and Brian. Is this more of a retelling of their time together as childhood friends than we knew initially? Maybe, or at least initially that I knew. I don't know about that. But I can say that I really enjoyed this issue for the same reasons that I've really enjoyed every single other issue of this series, which is that it feels so right for the time and place if you grew up within the 80s and you kind of were of that certain age group where the latchkey kids run wild. And that's kind of was prevalent in that time frame. I've been in these circumstances that these kids have been in. I've lived the lives that they've lived. And it's so nice to kind of be able to look under the lens of these, of this story itself and be able to relate so easily to the circumstances that are happening. The characters in here they're really true. They're not stereotypes of the characters or the people that we grew up with, but they fit those archetypes so well. And to see them go through the hardships that these last 2 issues have put them in, particularly within the party structure itself and how they don't quite fit in, especially when you add jocks to the mix and they kind of ruin things for our heroes. It's just all so true and so natural, and it comes off in a way that does not feel like a forced story whatsoever. It feels real, natural, and something that happened because, like I said, if you've lived it, you've been there, you already know. Again, I love what Brett Parsons is doing with the artwork here. It is a very, very caricature forward style, but it just allows him to show the emotion so much and so easily with the characters as they experience the good, the bad, and the ugly. This issue particular being the ugly. And when it's such a cartoony style, when brutal things happen, that brutality is almost, like elevated to another stance because you don't see it coming and you don't expect that kind of thing from such a cartoony style. So overall, Grommets has been fantastic. We have a couple more issues until this series, wraps up. And so far, it's been one of my favorite of 2024. Ghost Machine has a new premiere issue, so let's talk Halo and Hornsby number 1, written by Peter Tomasi with artwork by Peter Snesberg. So this issue is not dissimilar to basically Orion and Mr. Miracle from the DC's Fourth World. We see our 2 main characters, one of angelic upbringing and one of demonic upbringing, basically get traded off, and we're kind of at the onset of the idea of nature versus nurture. Is a good character, a naturally born good character, going to still live out those good characteristics if he has bad circumstances he's put in, and vice versa? The mission statement that nature versus nurture is not something that you have to dig deep for within the pages of this book. In fact, they outright say it. This is nature versus nurture right there in the dialogue of this book. So it's not something you have to explore. It's not a heavy, weighty kind of book. In fact, I would say that this is probably Ghost Machine's most family-friendly, accessible book that they've put out yet. And it's kind of exciting because it's something new that they haven't actually explored yet. Right now, Ghost Machine is putting out some of the best books that are on stands, and with a new entry that explores new, different ideas that they haven't had to do yet, They're really kind of putting this line as something that is going to be giving something for everyone. And that's a really great idea because, again, the line keeps growing. It keeps giving you new, exciting ideas. And this is more of the same. So, again, this is working under those ideas where is good truly good in bad circumstances? Can bad be changed to be good if you give them the best circumstances? It's a fun exploration. It's nice seeing that these young characters get to live out these circumstances and you get to see it and kind of see their adventures through these pages. And we get to see them learn a little bit about the angelic and demonic upbringing that maybe has been suppressed as they're being raised on Earth here and now. So overall, Halo and Hornsby was a fun introductory issue, and I really want to see where they take it from here. Next up, let's talk Hyde Street number 2, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Ivan Reis. Man, this issue felt way darker than the first installment of Hyde Street. As at least with that issue, we had, Mr. X-Ray as kind of being like a shining light of hope, whereas he was kind of reluctantly taking on these tasks and banishing these souls as a mechanism to get out. Not necessarily that he wanted to be a bad person, but he was a flawed, nuanced person. This issue, we get the origin of, our Boy Scout character, Pranky, and man, it is way darker and way bloodier and way different than anything that we got within the pages of that first book. You can see he kind of delights in the indulgence of taking these terrible characters and putting them through their paces. You can see that he delights in stealing from the other people as we learn a little bit more about the scorekeeping mechanism within this world and how they are taking on these tasks of banishing these souls and kind of the inner workings of the world behind the scorekeeper. I really like that they took the time to give us a little bit of, the background on that, even though the majority of this issue is, again, really based around the background and the origins of the Boy Scout character and how he got to be on Hyde Street and taking on the purpose of banishing these souls. Really fun, exciting issue. Ivan Reis continues to really render these characters fantastically with all the brutality that we see in the blood, the guts, the everything that comes with a horror book. He's hitting those things pitch perfect, and I love what they're putting forward. So again, another Ghost Machine book that continues to be fantastic. Okay, let's talk Iron Man number 2, written by Spencer Ackerman with artwork by Julius Ota. So this was strikingly better than issue number 1, as I feel like the onset of this new run kind of stumbled on its feet a couple different times. Well, this one kind of picked itself up, dusted itself off, and we actually started to, work with some new ideas that we didn't really get to explore within that first issue. Are we kind of trudging around the same, the same things that we've explored with Tony and his past? Sure, he's losing his company. He has to build a new suit because everything's been depowered. Been there, done that. But at the very least, I think that the visual storytelling in this by Julius it's been a bright spot, and they're starting to definitely lean into some of the better aspects of this book. And I think that they're starting to explore different arenas within the Marvel universe and Tony's universe that it's starting to open this book up a little bit. A little bit is all I really needed. I want to enjoy this book, but I kind of have to give it a short leash just because prior runs have been a little bit of a letdown. It feels like there's not a lot of writers out there that really can understand the character of Tony and deliver new ideas in an exciting way. This has the chance, but again, I have to keep it on a short leash. What I'm trying to say here really is that issue 3 needs to deliver something big and bold, and without that, I don't know if I'm going to be keeping up with this. But that's not to say that this was a bad issue overall. It's just that I need something new. Next up, let's talk Justice League Unlimited number 1, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Dan Mora. It's so crazy having multiple Mark Waid books each and every week at this point, really, because I feel like he's a chameleon. Like, he can write things that feel classic, and he can write things that feel so brand new and of its time. This book, brand new and of its time. The setup of this is so freaking awesome, as now the Justice League is really just like the encapsulation of all superheroes that agree to be part of the Justice League itself, and they call upon the right characters at the right time for the right problems to solve. It's an idea that was explored, in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers, and I think that that was the onset of one of the best stories within that universe itself. I'm hoping that this can do the same thing and kind of like rise to the ranks of things that we think of, kind of like Grant Morrison's JLA run that he had. Hopeful, right? This is the first onset of the, of this new run here, but I think that it has the possibility to do so. It has that possibility because you have an artistic talent like Dan Mora on the book, and I quite frankly don't understand how Dan Mora, with the quality of his artwork, can continue to put out multiple books month over month. It is awesome. His artwork is fantastic. It is the perfect type of artwork for this type of book, and it's just hitting on all cylinders. We deal with, in this issue, it's really kind of all set up, right? It's the Justice League in their new watchtower. It's them being deployed on missions, and it's really just it's doing so to show us how these things are happening, how the team can be deployed at a moment's notice, what it means for the team to be deployed in their mission statement, how it is that they're helping people and solving the problems that are in, all across the world and universe, really. What we see from that, though, is it starts laying the seeds of some of the downfall of what this could be already. So we're already seeing cracks within the system and how this can all come tumbling down, which of course we don't want, but if it's a compelling story, then we kind of need. So overall, Justice League Unlimited was a really great introductory issue, and I can't wait to see what they do with this next. All right, let's talk Nightwing 120, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Dexter Soy. This has been a really fun exploration, as within these first two issues of Dan Waters' run, we can see that, Dick Grayson is being played like a fiddle. He thinks he has a good understanding of everything that is going on within Bloodhaven. He's made all of these strides and made it a better place to live and a better place to be for its citizens. However, he doesn't understand everything that's happening, and it's so awesome kind of seeing the low level crime be replaced by white collar crime within, Bloodhaven, and how he's going to navigate that as he's cleaned up the streets. But how is he going to clean up the high rises of Bloodhaven, and how is he going to deal with, I guess, the privileged crime that happens within these cities? Because he's kind of one of those privileged people, and he works directly with some of those privileged people. So it's going to be cool seeing him navigate those murky waters. That's going to be much different than just, coming to blows with people like Blockbuster. Dexter Soy, I feel like he did a much better job in this issue, as the artwork didn't feel quite as rushed as the initial issue of this run did. It took more time, there was more expression. I still feel like his artwork lends itself better to being something that is zoomed out than zoomed in. I think he works better when he's dealing with an action scene so much more than just a dialogue 9-panel grid type of style where it's talking heads. Overall, again, this is another good issue within this run. It's setting things up that I think are worthwhile for the character of Dick Grayson to explore, and I think it's going to be a fun ride overall. So if you read this one, let me know your thoughts down below. Next up, let's talk Tin Can Society number 3, written by Peter Warren with artwork by Francesco Mobili. So we continue our character exploration as this group of friends has been already kind of like pulled apart basically from their childhood friendships into their adulthood, as personality types change and people kind of rub against each other the wrong ways. But they're all kind of drawn back together with the murder of one of their friends. And we kind of see that idea kind of develop and grow as we see how the relationships have basically changed, and how things have ruminated from childhood up to adulthood, and how some of them stayed very close together and how some of them pulled apart. The characters in this story are really the driving factor behind everything, as they feel real and developed, and I don't know, they feel nuanced. They don't feel like, stereotypes of the characters that they could be. It feels like there's a lot of time and energy put behind the backstory of who these people are and what their motivations are. So I love that, because that really enriches the story so much more. This could be easily a contrived story that is just very simply a murder mystery about characters that we don't care about. But very quickly within this series, I've learned to care about each and every character, even some of them that are less savory than the other ones, basically. I like how the murder mystery is also evolving, as well as the character who had met his untimely demise has really kind of been shown to be this loving character, like this bright, shining ray of hope, basically amongst these friends. But we start to learn that maybe there was other things that were happening in the background that basically led to the untimely demise that he met. Time will tell on that. Each issue kind of has its hook in you. Basically, it finds a cliffhanger ending that wants you coming back for more. But on top of that, again, you have the great character work and development that Peter Warren is putting forward with each and every one of these people. So I love how that's continuing to grow and flourish. So overall, Tin Can Society has continued to be one of my surprise picks and one of the most enlightening picks each and every week. All right, next up we have Ultimate Black Panther number 10, written by Brian Edward Hill with artwork by Carlos Nito. This is the first issue where I feel like I am really grasping the critique that a lot of people have had with this book, which is that it is a slow burn. And this one is an incredibly slow burn. In fact, I can sum this up in one sentence. Basically, Killmonger and Storm are on a boat. There we go. You got it. You got the issue. There's something missing, especially within the pacing of this issue, that like I needed something more to happen, some other kind of big bold idea to take place here, as we've explored a lot of new things that are coming down the pipeline, and we were exploring things that feel like they kind of just fell by the wayside. And granted, this is only one issue, but the nature of vibranium and how that impacts our character and the characters that use it, Killmonger and Storm's relationship, and how one of them doesn't necessarily buy fully into the idea of Wakanda helping people. It feels like this was just, I don't know, place setting. This was a place setting issue, and it feels like it was really just a way of introducing the Sorcerer Supreme character within the pages of the Ultimate Universe and kind of showing how powerful she can be. But that could have been done within 2 issues as opposed to 22. I'm sorry, 2 pages as opposed to 22 pages. So I don't know. We'll see about that. It was, again, one of the more lackluster issues so far. But again, when we're 10 issues in and it's the first critique that I've really had that's been a negative, that's a pretty good track record. So we'll let this one slide and we'll see what the next issue brings. Next up, we have Ultramega number 7, written and drawn by James Harren. If you're buying this book and you're keeping up with it, you're not buying it for the story at this point. You're buying it for the artwork, as James Harren's crazy kaiju body horror experiment is really fun to watch unfold. You don't really need to know the story. If you're along for that kind of ride, get ready to be confused, because the first arc really kind of built the foundation of kaijus and monsters fighting, and it was really very much in that Ultraman archetype. The next arc, the one that we're dealing with right now, is all about the nature of those Ultramen and their relationship to the kaiju, and how there's intergalactic races that have like uneasy treaties. And man, it has kind of blown up into this weird convoluted thing that is trying to be equal parts fun but equal parts pushing the story forward. And it's like, I feel like it's clashing its heads at those points. It's a fun ride, but again, I would much rather just see the wild, zany, wacky Benny Hill skits that's basically going on within these pages of kaijus and Ultramen running around, chasing each other, fighting each other, getting limbs ripped off. That's what I'm in for. The story is secondary. The art is awesome. So again, Ultramega, really weird story, really great artwork though. Next up, let's talk Uncanny X-Men number 6, written by Gail Simone with artwork by Javier Garron. So it's almost like the creative team heard my critiques from the previous issue, as one of the main things I kept saying was that we have these new characters and we haven't really explored their backgrounds and their stories, and we haven't lived in their shoes enough. This issue is a lot about that. We get to really spend time with them as they have really kind of developed within the society of this little town. They're starting to go to school. We start to see the background on the characters, particularly in this issue, Calico. And we start to see what it means for them to be mutants and to live within a mutant-hating society. The critique that I have on this issue is that it was very whiplashy. We spend time with them, but boom, we're over with Logan. And after we're done with Logan, boom, we're with Jubilee and Nightcrawler. And after that, boom, we're working with Rogue and Remy. And it's just like nothing feels like it has a good, clean ending to a scene. And before you know it, you're just over to another person dealing with another thing. And then you go back and you re-explore this other idea with this other character. There needed to be better transitions from place to place and person to person, because I just got whiplash from reading this. The art change from David Marquez to Javier Garran was good. It wasn't necessarily jarring, but it was also in that same vein a little bit unspectacular. I really kind of got to the place where I was loving what David Marquez was doing, and kind of, I don't know, really, applauding him for being on the series for 5 issues running, which at Marvel is kind of a big deal. You can see art changes within the first 2 issues of a series. So to have 5 was pretty darn good. So I can't wait for him to get back on the book here. Overall, I think this is the weakest issue of the series so far, but it still set some pretty high marks on there. So unspectacular, but still pretty good. And with our runner-up pick of the week, let's talk Universal Monsters Frankenstein, number 4, written and drawn by Michael Walsh. So this is the culmination of the series, and I gotta say, I think that this is actually rivaling the other Universal properties that we've had previously with Dracula and Creature from the Black Lagoon. Michael Walsh has done a great job at the sparseness of a book, right? He's only giving the book exactly what it needs, whether that's by way of the color palettes, the narration, the line work. Everything is absolutely just what is needed to deliver the idea that he is trying to get across. And he did so in such a beautiful way. I love the humanity of this book too, as the book obviously revolves around life, right? Which is humanity itself, the notion of life and bringing life back. And to see the boy character that we've, kind of gone through this journey with, and to see how he reacts to basically the monster itself, the monster's demise, the downfall of the doctor, and how he perceives that and how he makes choices based on the way that the story has unraveled and how that's impacted him. It was such a beautiful way to look at the story. It was such a beautiful end cap to this story, and it was really quite stunning. I think Michael Walsh, in a big way, put this forward as saying, hey, I'm back on the map. I took a couple years off, but now I'm here, and I'm here for good. So kudos to Michael Walsh. I think that this was a fantastic issue, a fantastic series, and I think it's definitely one worthwhile to explore. And with our top comic of the week, let's talk Superman number 20, written by Joshua Williamson with artwork by Dan Mora. So shout outs to Stu at Dr. Doom's fan club, because honestly, this book wasn't on my radar, as I had kind of dropped Superman after the House of Brainiac event because it got bogged down with the Absolute Power tie-ins, and I didn't really intend to kind of jump back in there, as I'm already reading a couple different Superman books and you can get Supermaned out very quickly. But I'm so glad that he recommended that I read this, because this issue is awesome. It's nostalgia done right. If you grew up where the boom of comic books occurred, with things like X-Men #1 and in particular the death of Superman, this is going to hit hard for you, because it's a way of looking at those events, the death of Superman, and putting it under a microscope, but it's also the evolution of that idea. It's not leaning on those old ideas, but it's exploring them and seeing where does this take us now, and where could this take us? Because the character of Doomsday is a very clever, nuanced creature, as again, he himself is all about evolution. And it's the idea of where does this take that character if every time he dies, he comes back and he comes back better. So to see that kind of idea and to see where that takes, Doomsday and Superman in the future, that's really exciting stuff. I've already gushed about Dan Mora in previous reviews here, in particular the Justice League Unlimited issue, but I got to go ahead and say it again. Dan Mora is killing it in this issue. He's doing such fantastic work, and the fact that he's doing it, again, multiple books per month, is just mind-blowing. Why can't we get that more from other artists? I love seeing it. The more Dan Mora we get, the better. That's all I can really say. This was a fun, joyous romp. I'm here. I'm along for the ride. It was clearly a mistake to drop this book, because I think that this looks to be the premier Superman book for you to be reading. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.